Hello, builders. This is The Engine. I'm your host, Zasha Berry. The Engine is a show about building in crypto and with crypto. So whether you're already building in the space or you're trying to figure out what this whole crypto, Web3, blockchain, Onchain thing is about, you're in the right place. Stick around. And today we're talking about building in DeFi. My guests are Yoshua Urioste, also known as Tencent. He is the head of business development at Silo, a lending protocol that allows you to borrow any crypto asset with another on isolated lending markets where your risk is always siloed. My other guest is anonymous, and he goes by the name of Beachball. He is a core contributor at Synonym, which is a cross-chain money market. We talked about all kinds of things DeFi. We talked about the current state of that corner of crypto and why is it picking up steam, the impact of institutional players, the impact of Memecoins. We talked about challenges of harnessing Degen energy and the importance of building partnerships for ecosystem growth, the importance of transparency, security, and education in creating safe and user-friendly environments, the fragmentation in crypto ecosystem, and the importance of interoperability between different chains. Both my guests are really excited about Bitcoin in this cycle and especially about Ethereum pilling the Bitcoin community. So we talked about different opportunities and challenges around that. So we covered a lot and we'll get right to it. But first, a quick word about core contributors of the first season of The Engine, Threshold Network and Build Cities. Threshold Network provides a suite of threshold cryptography services. So if you're building an application that involves private data and trusting an intermediary won't fly, you may want to check out Taco, which is the only encryption and access control plugin that is end-to-end decentralized. So what is Taco for? Builders are using it in various applications such as seed phrase recovery, crypto inheritance, media libraries management, and even concealing in-game assets. And these are just some of the use cases. You can use Taco to build a decentralized password manager or location sharing plugin, or even a live streaming platform, or any other dApp that involves private data. So go to threshold.network, check out Taco documentation, and see how you can easily integrate that plugin into your dApp. Build Cities is a global cooperative of startup cities. The world is changing rapidly. Resources and expertise that are so needed to create businesses and innovation used to be locked into certain ecosystems for centuries. But now, these resources are flowing freely around the world, empowering local communities. Passports and visas may still limit our ability to travel, but we can teleport anywhere over Zoom and collaborate with our partners all over the world. Build Cities is creating a digital infrastructure that empowers this collaboration and innovation and connects builders from all over the world. Check out their website and see how in this new world, Lagos is not far from Los Angeles and London, and Nassau is right next to Phuket and Paris. You can join the community right now with your Discord login. You can also mint a Dream, which is a collaborative AI NFT that serves as a pass to the entire Build Cities ecosystem, including all of their IRL events throughout the year around the country. The link is in the description. One more thing about Build Cities. If you're going to EthCC, and I am jealous of you if you are, not for me this year, but if you're going and if you're interested in building on the intersection of digital and physical, and if you are into regen stuff, you may want to add another event to your crazy calendar. And I know it's going to be crazy because it always is. But Build Cities and VDAO are hosting an all-day Building Network States Summit and Hackathon. There will be great speakers and networking and of course hacking. So check it out. You may want to add it to your schedule. And last but not least, The Engine is powered by Skylab, a community of Web3 builders. Between ourselves, we often describe it as AA for founders, except for we're not trying to quit being founders. Quite the opposite. We're trying to stick with it. And it's always better with a friend. And it's even better when it's a group of friends that are building towards similar goals. If you're building in crypto and you're looking for a community, check out skylab.xyz. The membership is free, but it's invitation only, so fill out the form and somebody will reach out to you. The link is in the description. And now let's dive into my chat with Joshua and Beachball. Hello everybody, the engine is here and my guests are Joshua, known as Tencent at Silo, and Beachball from Synonym. And we are going to be talking about building in DeFi. We're going to be talking about a lot of things, tBTC and finding yield around Bitcoin, but also broader things in DeFi. And as always, we start with what brought you into crypto? What was your light bulb moment? Tenzin.
Yeah.
Why don't you kick us off?
So, I got started in crypto maybe back in 2017, I think was probably it. Before that, I was doing some trading, some Forex stuff and some stock trading. But what really made it click, I guess, for me was the instant finality, right? The ability to be able to send something instantly be available across the world at any time. People don't actually realize that's actually quite a feature. To create even a wire transfer, it can still take a day or two. An ACH transfer is 3 to 5 days. Crypto takes 5 seconds, right? 40 if you're on Ethereum sometimes. But that really made it click for me. And then how I got started really was I was doing some arbitrage, I guess you could say trading. Essentially I just bought, Bitcoin and local Bitcoins, and I would sell it like on Paxful, or I would just move it around different platforms and make some sort of premium. And that really got me started. And then I started getting more involved with DAOs and other such entities.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a very common trajectory, starting with one or two financial instruments, and then we stay for more because we see all of the potential. It came for money, stayed for friends, stayed for technology, stayed for community, stayed for changing the world, right? Some sort of journey like that. Right. Beachball, what was your light bulb moment? What made crypto make sense to you?
Yeah, for me, I think I started in a pretty similar place as Tencent. Like the global instant settlement was really interesting, and then I started going down the rabbit hole of how lending would work and got really, really interested in DeFi and the space in general in the earlier days of Maker, experimenting with their CDPs and all that on chain. And I just thought it was really fascinating. And then after that, I started to get more involved with a number of DAOs and projects to start just at a really basic contributor level, but got involved with groups like Notional Finance, which is a really interesting fixed rate lending product that was originally on Ethereum, and then some, I guess, more exotic DeFi focused DAOs like Jones DAO, and that kind of just brought me to where I am today. But yeah, I would say that on-chain lending and DeFi's potential to scale globally is what got me in originally.
And so when did you get in? Around 2018, 19 then?
Yeah, 18 or 19, late 18, 19, I was kind of in and educated just in time to participate in all the vegetable farming DeFi protocols and go from there. So, yeah.
Yeah. And do you have any background in finance? Because to me, it's always, there's DeFi is such a potent space within our space, but for so many people, it's so hard to get in because it's so confusing. It's so fractured, and we'll talk more about that, but it's difficult to grasp and figure out. And so I feel like a lot of people who have like financial background or technical background kind of grasp on it easier. Was that your story?
Yeah, before jumping full-time into DeFi, I worked in venture capital. I was one of the evil VCs on the other side. Not in crypto, other industries, but so I had that background and was actually still working in that role while I was kind of getting initially involved in some of the DAOs, and just said to myself one day, DeFi is all I think about, 24 hours a day. I might as well jump in full time. So.
That's awesome. Well, while we're here, sort of, maybe you can put on your VC hat a little bit and DeFi Pro hat and talk a little bit about where DeFi is currently, because of course there was the DeFi summer a few years ago, and DeFi was booming, and then there was the DeFi collapse of everything. Well, it started with a CeFi collapse, but then DeFi also went down with it, with the whole industry. And so DeFi has been making a comeback. What do you feel is contributing to that, and how do you see it moving forward?
We're in an interesting place in compared to the previous cycle. The previous cycle we had kind of just mania, like kind of like I would compare it to the dot-com bubble, where just everything was going up crazy amounts. No one was doing much diligence at all, even the funds. And I did actually work also at a small family office fund. But this time around, we're seeing it's much more cool and collected, right? The capital is gathering around the main currencies, right? Like Ethereum, Bitcoin. Those are the things that are going up, and more of like the VC ecosystem stuff. But in terms of what I think, I guess the next step is for DeFi, I'm really, really liking what's being done with tokenize and the RWAs. They had a hearing with Congress the other day on tokenizing different funds and assets. And if you get the RWAs on chain and you make it such that it's completely permissionless and decentralized, and even if you don't, even if you make it like permission transfers, that is like the scalability of DeFi, right? Like looping RWAs, that's $1 trillion market, right? Like, so yeah, I'm looking forward to like what we can do with the products that the centralized more system brings into blockchain. But as of right now, I think we're still kind of waiting for the regulatory clarity. And then other than that, I've seen a lot of basically like AI narratives and stuff like that. But I'm not 100% convinced on the AI crypto narrative. I think AI is fantastic. It's hugely, it's going to be a huge thing for the world. But I haven't seen anyone really do it with blockchain in a way that like makes sense to me, other than it's really cool what you're doing, right? Like, but yeah.
Well, there's a lot definitely to unpack there, and I think even with AI, there's different ways that crypto can overlap with AI. There's the sort of tracking of the IP and tracking of elements that of sort of databases that those algorithms are trained on, and possibly rewarding the owners of those IPs or information bases. That's one thing that where blockchain can be used. But then also there's AI powered trading, and that's a whole other story. Yeah, definitely RWAs are making the biggest noise in this cycle, it seems. Beachball, what's your feeling? What is powering the comeback of DeFi, and how far are we going to go this time?
Yeah, I mean, as far as how far we're going to go this time, that's a tough one. I wish I knew the answer to that, but I tend to agree with Tenzin on this. I think the kind of, for lack of a better word, like institutional focus this cycle around is likely what's driving most of the activity we're seeing. To Tenzin's point about capital forming around like the core assets like Ethereum and BTC, I think that's just a result of kind of the increased institutional confidence in those assets. You see groups like BlackRock, planning to build on ETH, or at least heavily hinting in that direction. Um, and I think it's just because it translates at the end of the day to a direct improvement in their bottom line. I think there's a lot of things that TradFi can borrow or build on top of from DeFi that just simply makes their operations at the scale they're at significantly more efficient. And at their scale, a 0.001% improvement in performance at any part of their business is millions and millions of dollars in savings. So that's definitely a big part of it. I think the other part that's probably pushing DeFi forward this time around is, regardless of what chain or VM you're focused on, whatever flavor of Maxi you are, I do see that this time around there's a lot of ecosystems, EVM and non-EVM, that are actually making like a lot of concrete, tangible progress in their ecosystems, in their UX, in the available liquidity, versus last cycles where sure there were a lot of so-called, L1 killers or Ethereum killers that were out there, but there wasn't really anything going on. I think the teams that are building in the space and the ecosystems that are in the space this time around are actually far more productive and creating a lot more value. So I think that the combination of those two things will probably push us pretty far. Obviously, they come with a lot of challenges like potentially bad UX or liquidity fragmentation, et cetera. But I think hopefully those two big components take us much further this time around than previous ones.
Yeah, it's interesting how both of you, and I mean, all of us talk about how we are getting sort of closer to TradFi. I mean, no surprise there. I mean, there are the ETFs, there's the conversations in the Congress, and there's sort of, we are getting what we've been asking for. We are getting more attention, we are getting more clarity on regulation, or at least hope for clarity on regulation. And it's the light at the end of the tunnel seems like it is starting to show. But then what is your feeling? Because I feel that crypto has always had this anti-establishment feel and strong anti-establishment sentiment. And Bitcoin started as an alternative financial system, and DeFi is decentralized financial system. And is something being washed out as we're getting closer to TradFi? Is there a possibility that our true crypto punk values are going to be corrupted? Is there a danger?
Yeah, well, I think, it's funny. I mean, like people think like it won't be cool when everyone is using it, more or less. That's how people feel about it. But I think that, I mean, this was, in my opinion, always the goal, right? I mean, the general direction that DeFi at least always wanted to head was like you can create the decentralized railways, and then it doesn't matter if you're centralized or decentralized. Just use the underlying technology. So long as you're building on Ethereum, like for example BlackRock is, right? Like you're bringing in a huge amount of capital and just growing the overall decentralized ecosystem. At the same time, you're improving the old centralized one, right? So I don't see that problem. I do understand it from like a sense of like community, right? People are feeling like, okay, this is becoming more of like a black tie kind of area. But yeah, no, I see it. I see overall hugely positive things coming out of these big companies, and I think these big companies also do care about decentralization, which is usually quite not their angle. But yeah. I will say that we have a lot more money this cycle around in terms of politics, right? So crypto in general, we got like super PACs. I don't remember, it's like Freedom Unchained or something, but there's a lot of money
Stand
going
with
into
crypto,
lobbying.
another one, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah. So,
Yeah, I think Tenza hit it right on the head. Like, there's definitely the concern about, oh, it's not cool anymore. We're selling the bankers their coins, that whole thing. But I think people need to remember, if the goal was to build a permissionless global financial system, the aspect of permissionlessness means that those who are a current member of the global financial system can build on it, right? Like you can't be permissionless, but not them.
Yeah.
So that's going to happen. I think as long as large entities in DeFi, the Lidos of the world, continue to maintain decentralization and avoiding centralization risks as core parts of their roadmap, we're going to be fine. These financial parties like BlackRock joining in on what we're building is kind of inevitable if we're actually going to be successful at what the whole goal was the whole time. So, I think it's a net positive for sure.
And so we're focusing a little bit here on TradFi and the big players and this side of it, but the current meta in the space are still the meme coins. So how do you guys feel about the meme coins? Are they an obstacle that makes us look like a bunch of crazy apes and degens playing with these insane coins? And real serious people won't want to do business with an industry like that? Or the other take would be, is it an onboarding mechanism, onboarding sort of training wheels for somebody who wants to get familiar with decentralized finance? What's the balance of the scales there? What do you feel?
So it's interesting, but you know, the meme coin stuff, I think it's very similar to like the NFT stuff that was going on last cycle around. And I feel
Right.
like not that great about it, but I think it's mostly pretty anecdotal. But every time I go to a lot of these conferences and stuff, I don't think it's actually the black tie players. I think those are actually the people that are trading and making money on meme coins, right? Like the market makers are actually, they love meme coins, right? But the people that get burned the most by meme coins are actually the retail users. If you tell someone in a cab, like I've had this experience multiple times, like, oh yeah, like I'm in crypto, they'll be like, oh, I bought Safe Moon or I bought that and then I never touched it again, right? So that seems to be the biggest friction point that I've heard just anecdotally day to day from people. Like, why did you step away from it? It tends to be like either a meme coin or an NFT or something like that. So in that sense, I don't think it's helpful for the space. That being said, I don't know, meme economy might go up. Some people do well on meme coins, so more power to you. But yeah, overall, I don't think it's a hugely positive force or it brings much. But yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'd say it can be positive sometimes. I mean, it really depends on kind of the journey that the user takes. Do they buy, sell at a slight gain, slight loss, then all of a sudden they have a funded wallet that they might be able to experiment with? Maybe, but I feel like more often than not, the outcomes are typically negative. I think that there could be an interesting angle for any of the decentralized social players out there to try and bolt their products on top of users who are onboarded via meme coins, and I think you see that starting to emerge in that sector. But I think it's pretty rare that a user onboarded via meme coins has a net positive experience and stays and contributes to any other part of the ecosystem. So yeah, I would probably say negative as well on
Right.
balance.
Right. And so then I guess the expectation for the more sustainable future is for us to continue building more interesting tools and onboarding more traditional people who are into traditional investing right now, experimenting in slightly more conservative ways. But degens, of course, are still the heart of the community in crypto. When you work with your communities and when you think about growing your communities, how do you think about harnessing the degen energy? Because that also can be sort of a two-edged sword. When there is something to farm, degens are there. When there's nothing else to farm anymore, degens move on to the next big thing to farm. And how do you create sustainability there?
Yeah. I mean, I think for us, it's been largely about being degens ourselves, or some of us at least, and understanding where those opportunities arise. I mean, I think the biggest push for us has been by far Pendle derivative tokens, right? Which are in themselves a bit complicated, but I recommend people to look at them. They work like a zero coupon bond where you can buy an asset at a discount at a future date, right? So looping that discount over can generate massive, massive yields, right? Like, and when you're talking these pools that are actually being subsidized with points, with the LRTs and all that stuff, it just makes so much sense. Some people are making something like 60 to even hundreds of percentages depending on what you're using. But yeah, so I think it's just about identifying opportunities, being agile, and listing a lot of derivatives for us in particular, and that has to do with us being kind of risk isolated and also just reaching out.
Reaching out where? What do you mean?
We speak with like all of the like mid-sized whales in the protocol. We try to give like some white glove service. If you have like a decent sum of capital and you just want to understand something better, We just try to talk to them, keep a line of communication, and at the same time, whenever they have something interesting, they tell it to us, right? And if we think that it warrants our development time, then we'll list it. But yeah.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Beachball, what's your sense on harnessing Degen energy?
Yeah, it's definitely a powerful resource to harness. I think staying on top of the latest developments is really important. Like the space moves so fast that if you're not completely plugged in or have a number of team members that are into what the latest opportunity is, it's going to be really hard to capture mind share. Um, at Synonym, we kind of group our DGen community members into a few different buckets. There's obviously the larger whales that can contribute a lot of assets to whatever strategies or lending markets that they choose, which we also try to engage with quite a bit. And then there's smaller users, and I don't think that whales should necessarily entirely dictate development cycles. So we try to engage with the smaller guys as well. And when it comes to interfacing with them, we just try and provide more ways for them to feel like they're part of the protocol and part of its development. So whether that's small rewards or things like roles for research tasks or social creation, that kind of thing. We think that kind of helps balance out the degen energy at the other end of the scale where the asset volumes might not be as large. But I think it really just comes down to how nimble and flexible you are day to day, right? Like you need to be able to jump on things really quick and get that in front of people as soon as you possibly can.
Right. Well, and sort of continuing on this note of collaboration and harnessing energy of other participants of the market. So we talked about the degens, and you touched on, and Tencent touched on connecting with other protocols, onboarding, integrating. What is the role, and how do you think about establishing these partnerships? What do you prioritize? How do you think about partnerships?
So I mean, as far as like for us, right, a partnership typically entails us listing something as some form of collateral in its own isolated market. So basing that off that, right, it has to be something where either ETH or USDC, right, which are our paired assets, are favorable things to borrow, which they tend to be, and the collateral has to make sense for the looper in terms of all the other markets, right? Like if you look at the borrowing cost, for example, on Silo Arbitrum on USDC, you'll see that it's around from 10% up to 25%, depending on the risk of the asset. So if the asset is making 3%, if you have a RWA which is 3% yielding, you're never going to get USDC borrowers on that other side, right? So we have to balance out the native yield of the derivative with the actual borrowing cost, right? How is it profitable for both sides? And after that, really, it's a matter of looking at a combination of TVL users, just a bunch of data points of like maybe what are they interacting with. Like if it's a user that is kind of a DEX liquidity provider, they have a kind of a different profile than someone that's a lender, right? And so yeah, just identifying those users, trying to message them in whatever way we can, and make them aware of us even existing, and then they tend to like it, right? But yeah, I would say that's more or less the logic.
Beachball, how do you guys think about partnerships and bringing people in or projects in and connecting with them?
On the partner side, I mean, we face similar things that Tencent mentioned, right? When it comes to available liquidity, users, growth of a potential partner, which are obviously all things we look at. For us with Synonym, we're a multi-chain money market. So, I mean, part of our value prop, which does come with trade-offs like any DeFi product, is that you could deposit on chain A, borrow on B, repay from C, and withdraw from D, right? It's a pretty flexible lending market. Obviously, that does come with a few other requirements, right? For us, when we look at partners, there needs to be incentives on all chains for users to be using a certain dual protocol strategy across multiple chains. There needs to be sufficient liquidity in every possible endpoint for that strategy wherever it touches. We typically try to use USDC as much as possible in our strategies just because it has the native burn and mint capabilities via CCTP. So that's a big part of it, is having that kind of infrastructure in place from a project that we partner with. And then kind of a more qualitative thing that we look at is just finding partners that are really aligned with the same kind of growth goals and mission that you have, especially as a smaller protocol that's just recently started up, right? It's hard to get the level of time commitment and buy-in from like really big partners that are out there. I think a good example that a lot of teams faced with this was the LRTs, liquid restake tokens. They were just so busy, and there's only so many hours of time that these teams have to allocate to partners. So I think that a lot of times just like making sure we're aligning ourselves with teams that have the resources, have the time, and have the same goals as us is really important. Otherwise, you kind of just end up putting out like a superfluous marketing tweet and then nothing really happens. So yeah, that's the other thing that we are kind of constantly thinking about when we select partners.
That's interesting. And so how, as a smaller player, how do you move forward? Do you focus on projects that are sort of in the similar stage and grow together, or do you try to get attention of somebody who is maybe ahead? And because that kind of works for all kinds of different businesses and different applications, it's sort of a strategic thing. Do you grow with others of your size, or do you bug somebody bigger and get their attention?
Good question. I think in general, we're probably aiming up a little bit on the size, where, we're going after some larger teams, not the huge, massive space and industry defining teams, but we generally go after larger teams that are new ecosystems where we can step in and build something a little more tailored as a strategy or as a lending market that helps them reach their goals. That basically makes the pitch for being a partner a no-brainer. One good example of that recently is we partnered with Scroll. Obviously, they're a growing ecosystem. They want to get more users and deposits on their ZK-EVML2. And we basically build a way for users that, might have found a home on other ecosystems, on other chains that may not want to leave that place, to basically be able to seamlessly borrow against their collateral into Scroll, on a remote chain, and kind of get their feet wet, like just try out the ecosystem without having to uproot themselves and move. And for teams like Scroll, right, again, that becomes a no-brainer because it's just a new funnel for users that they wouldn't otherwise have. So we typically try to aim our sights higher in terms of size of partners, but then build something kind of really like bespoke for them.
I think the most important thing is, if you're trying to grow lending and you're small, you're starting out, it's to carve out a niche and trying to be first to market. It doesn't necessarily have to be that the asset is large or small. It can be any size, so long as it's profitable for the leverager, and you are first there, you will grow, right? Like that was kind of our strategy, right? Like, what is no one else doing? And it's still very interesting, right? How can we become the home to those people that don't yet have a place to call, their lending home? So in that sense, I would say that it's the agility of you going to market is the most important thing for lending, in my opinion. But yeah.
It's interesting. You guys both touched sort of on this sense of belonging that people have, and feeling of fragmentation that we all experience in crypto. There's these guys that are doing this thing on this chain. There's the other guys, they're doing this thing on this other chain. And there's a little bit of sense of loyalty / tribalism within those tribes, within those groups. But then there's also sort of the Degen motivation, where people move from one thing to another depending on where the meta and the farming opportunities are. And then there's also sort of this general understanding that we kind of most of us, I guess, agree that more or less thing is going to be multi-chain there's probably, we've moved on from this idea. I think Beachball, you said this earlier. Nobody's doing the Ethereum killers or the other person killers anymore necessarily. We're all starting to get to the idea of, okay, we gotta all play together somehow and find ways to do that. And so how do you allocate, or how do you focus yourself? Because it seems to be challenging, where here's the fragmentation side of it, where you sort of need to adjust your tech and find your path to all these different communities. But here there's another path of growth where you evolve the tools themselves and UX and new different mechanisms. How do you balance focus in terms of building?
Great question. I mean, that's something that keeps us up at night, and that we talk about like every day. I think when you try to balance between looking at ecosystems that have growth potential that you already have the tech for, and then building the new tech for, I guess, ecosystems or communities that could represent a step change improvement in your protocol, or how many assets are deposited in it. It really just comes down to kind of staging and cadence in your roadmap, and how suddenly those opportunities arise. I mean, there could be an ecosystem that might require some retooling that looks pretty quiet, and then all of a sudden its growth just goes vertical. Obviously, you can't account for that in your planning. I think in general, we try to take a really kind of tech-focused view on our roadmap, where we constantly push the tooling that we have available and allocate most of our dev resources there, and then make kind of backward-facing ecosystem addition decisions based on that, right? Right now, the next big push for us is to basically be able to support chains beyond the EVM, right? And then when we get to that point, we kind of look back and say, okay, what of these compatible ecosystems makes sense for us to add right now? Kind of take a tech first view. Fortunately, since launch, we've been able to add I think up to 5 EVM ecosystems now. So that's been really great. But yeah, it's so challenging to plan ecosystem growth like far out in advance, because you just never know what's going to happen, what's going to pop off, what's going to shrink, what's going to have a major exploit. So it's a real challenge.
It's funny because Camilo Russo just tweeted the other day that it would be cool to have a tool that sort of tracks the Degen activity, because what you were saying, okay, there's like a ton of activity on this protocol or on this chain. Is it real? Is it going to be there in a month or two? Is it worth building towards? Or is it just farmers destroying and just farming the hell out of it, and then they're going to be out by the time you're there? Are there any, do you guys have any conversations about it, going back to the idea of partnerships? When you build towards certain ecosystems, do you coordinate with their marketing or token plans? Do they ever share that with you? Is that part of the thinking?
I mean, definitely some chains share plans with you and details that under NDA obviously and all these types of things. But I would say that generally we like to see from these chains to support us. Yes, of course, the marketing and all of the kind of social stuff. But then also what matters a lot is, first is like some chains have this it factor of like, there are no incentives on the chain. There's already been an airdrop, or there won't be an airdrop, and there's still massive amounts of people doing transactions. Arbitrum has that. Base certainly has that. Optimism has that a little bit. Optimism has a lot of idle capital in it, which is what we're focused on. And then there's the second thing, which is have they picked a winner? So if you look at a lot of the chains, a lot of the top protocols, it seems like they're very much favored by the chain. You don't want to go into into an arena where the guy's been given a weapon and you haven't, right? So Yeah. Is the ecosystem open for someone like us to come in and actually make a difference, or is someone already filling in that purpose, and are they already well accepted by the community? Um, yeah, I would say
Well, I mean,
maybe
it
that.
seems like Uniswap, Aave, and Maker are sort of all over the place already. Like,
Uh,
how do you get in there?
so yeah, but Aave,
I like
Compound,
that sound.
Uniswap,
Expand on that
yeah,
sound.
they don't really they aren't really building on any other chain besides Ethereum. Like if you are honestly think about it, like they'll port over their things afterwards. But like if you look at like, well, I don't want to name any chains or projects, but certain chains have their individual chain only project, I would say, right? Like they have this lending market that only exists on our chain, and this is our preferred lending market. Even if Aave is there, there typically is like an Aave fork that is preferred by the community people. Um, so yeah, I would say that Aave, Compound, Uniswap, that's less of the worry. If they're there, like really, that's not a problem for us. It's more of an addition, really, because now we can plug into their flash loans. We can use Uniswap for liquidations, right? So they're kind of an additive. The problem just comes in when the community or foundations are heavily favoring one ecosystem player in a vertical, um, which does happen. It happens across almost all chains, right? But yeah,
Interesting. It's sort of centralization by market
by friendship.
forces, by
Yeah, it
friendship.
tends to be more friendship. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's crazy how things like that impact a lot. Like, I mean, in any business, in every business, relationship matter, and relationships matter a lot. And here you're telling me that building a relationship can lead to having a priority on a chain, and that's a huge advantage. Is this resonating with your experience?
Very, very much. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm hearing a lot
Like
of
Tenzin
heaviness
said,
there.
those like Tenzin said, those like DeFi, I don't know what people like to call them lately, whatever the latest term is, but I'll call them DeFi, like superstructures like Compound or Uniswap. Yeah, they're nice to haves. But yeah, I would echo that. There's a lot of instances of chains where, if your friendships are at the top of the list, you're going to get an advantage on rewards, incentives, or whatever the foundation has control over. That would basically make a similarly designed or positioned competitor. It would make like them winning nearly impossible, right? It would be a pretty insurmountable challenge just because you have like a synthetic advantage that came from a friendship. And I won't name chains, but there's a couple lately that have been, I guess, really really clear examples of that, and it makes it
Yeah.
genuinely hard for other teams to innovate on your team. I think, or on your chain. I think a lot of foundations need to be really careful with how they allocate rewards and incentives. What may on the surface look like helping out a friend or a friendly protocol and creating a pretty big increase in TVL for them might actually be a completely lost incentive to innovate from other teams in disguise. So yeah, I think foundations need to be really really careful with how they allocate.
Yeah. Well, it really does sound. It's the first time I'm ever hearing about this having such a heavy impact. But I do understand and I do see how it can be disincentivizing for other builders to come into an ecosystem where you can see sort of privileged players, and it's a kind of corruption, and it's really worrisome, not in the sense of like fairness and whatnot, which that is disappointing, but hey, people are people and that will be happening. But it's kind of upsetting because we want the best tech and the best teams to win and have the opportunity to win.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, like you
Uh,
said, sorry, just to jump in quick, like you said, it's going to
yeah,
be
please.
everywhere, right? It's going to happen. People are people. Just like, yeah, foundations just need to be careful. That's all. And I know that any builders in the space are probably aware of that or have seen that happening. So
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that on that end, the Arbitrum team is almost like the antithesis to that. I know people say like, oh, like there's this cabal of voters, but it's really not true, right? We came in, we had basically no connections to mostly anyone on Arbitrum besides our fabled Chutoro, and they were very open. They still are to this day, help us every day, like anything you need. They're very, very communicative, and they do that for a lot of protocols, even like the protocols that build on us that are very small. They'll give them like the time of day. So I really appreciate them. Yeah.
yeah, Arbitrum is an incredible group. I know I said I won't name names before, but I will name Arbitrum as a foundation that is not in the group of teams that are doing
Yes.
this. Yeah, they've been great. As someone who's interfaced with a lot of foundation team members, it's amazing to be able to jump on Telegram and like instantly get answers to your questions, grab some time with people, survey them on what they're seeing in the market. It's a really incredible base to build on. And I mean, for us, like even though we're multi-chain, our hub lives on Arbitrum and will forever be there. So you could be borrowing from Optimism to Scroll, but a transaction will occur on Arbitrum, and there's a reason for that to 10 cents a point. So
Right. Well, yeah. Praise in public, scold in private, like in parenting. So we'll keep it at that. Yay to Arbitrum. Love Arbitrum, of course. Well, Beachball, you mentioned non-EVM chains, and I'm curious, which chains are we talking?
yeah, so the first non-EVM that we're going to go after is going to be Solana. Um, for us, I think there's just a clear incentive to go there. There's a lot of Solana users who may want to experiment with the EVM and vice versa, but moving their entire collateral position between the two chains is a little bit too much of an ask. So this is a product that I've personally wanted for a long time to be able to, borrow against my LRTs on Ethereum into USDC on Solana in one transaction. That's something that I feel like I could have had a use for quite some time. So that's our next stop. There's obviously like a lot of technical lift that needs to go on to make that happen. We need custom relayers. We obviously need to create contracts in a different language on the other side. And so there's a lot of work to be done, but we're hoping to get there in the next few months.
And Beachball, just out of curiosity, just because we're taking also a gander into multi-chain stuff this next version. Are you guys using layer 0 or CCIP? What sort of info are you using back there?
So we're using Wormhole right now. We are basically in this like position where as time goes on, if there's a chain that we want to connect to that is not serviced by our current messaging provider, we're happy to add, multiple message services to Synonym overall. But right now we're on Wormhole just because as far as the tools that they offered out of the box, it made sense for us. And the connectivity that they had with a lot of different ecosystems was something we wanted. We have looked into other offerings from Layer Zero, Axelar, some more niche upstart ones, and they've all got their trade-offs, right? I think it's important for people listening that like there is no clear winner when it comes to pretty much all of this tech. Like everything is the trade-off. It's a world of trade-offs. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, it turns out we've been really happy with Wormhole, and it's served our needs pretty well to date.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely kind of review a bit of Wormhole. We did a lot of research into layer 0 and CCIP in particular. CCIP isn't one we ended up going with, but yeah, no, very interested to see. We thought about connecting multiple hubs, but we're just, there could be the problem of like now you're bringing in the triple, the risk from each one of these systems. But yeah, no, it's very interesting to hear.
Yeah, interesting. And so we keep kind of touching on this whole fragmentation idea and trying to overcome this fragmentation. And I think historically, one of the biggest gaps has been between Bitcoin and more or less everything else. And so, but Bitcoin, at least currently in this cycle, has been probably one of the more exciting assets and one of the more exciting spaces. There's now building on Bitcoin. There's many attempts of connecting Bitcoin ecosystem and Bitcoin wealth to the Ethereum tools and bridging. So how are you guys thinking about the Bitcoin and being with it?
Oof, it's going to be good. That's what I'll say. I mean, we're speaking with Bob, Botanics, all the different Bitcoin layer twos that are coming out. Huge money behind them, right? There's going to be a lot of Bitcoin entering the DeFi ecosystem, which is huge positive. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I think Merlin's the only one that's kind of launched thus far, in terms of like full on launched. And that one's already one of the biggest chains, right? So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to a lot of these BTC derivatives also. We're seeing a bunch of different kind of flavors for BTC. We're looking to support any and all. And just BTC holders are actually fantastic borrowers for anyone to know, right?
What makes them fantastic?
Well, they're long term. They'll keep their loans open for a long time. They're not necessarily. I mean, some of them are, but majority of them are not mercenary. So like they come in, and when the incentives dry up, they actually stay. So they have sticky capital, and their borrowing rates are decent, right? They're willing to borrow at 10 to 12% on USDC, which is, I would say, a very decent amount for the going rate. So yeah, I think they're just fantastic DeFi users. Yeah.
Interesting. So there's a lot of energy pent up in that ecosystem that needs a release. And it's interesting, you were talking about, again, balancing, right? There's building on top of Bitcoin, and then there's onboarding Bitcoin people into tools and mechanisms and platforms on Ethereum. So where is your focus?
I mean, our focus is more Ethereum based and L2 based. We're not looking to expand too far outside of the EVM unless a good opportunity presents itself. But yeah, I would say we're mostly pretty Ethereum heavy on the team, although we love all of our Bitcoin users. But we're secretly Ethereum pilling them when we bring them over. So.
Nice. Beachball, what's your relationship with Bitcoin building and Bitcoin onboarding?
Yeah, I mean, it's super exciting. The amount of collateral that is there, that is held, to Tenzen's point, by people who are dedicated, long-term, highly invested users. It dwarfs pretty much anything else out there. And so when you start to see the value and the utility of that collateral get unlocked at scale across these kind of L2s that are coming out, it's going to be really exciting. I think some names that were mentioned were like Botanics and other groups. Yeah, we've been talking to Botanics and Mezzo and Stacks. Like there's so many different approaches and so much like real technical innovation that's happening at the BTC L2 level that, it's just a matter of time until something like really, really interesting comes out of it and we start to see some incredible growth. So I will say that we're kind of following silo strategy here on the secret Ethereum pilling, but I think that like any merger of these two cohorts of users, native EVM DeFi people and BTC holders is just like a net positive for the whole industry. So super excited about it.
Interesting. I love this Ethereum pilling thing. So basically it's it's meeting them where they are, which is what they tell us to do. And then telling them, hey, but you can do the same thing, but better and easier over there. More or less, is that what you guys doing?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
how are they getting to Ethereum, and what are the tools how they can get going?
Well, incentives certainly help bootstrap. We've worked on that end, but after the incentives dry up, the capital is sticky, so that's always good. And then I would say there is a lot of social fi platforms. Uh, some of them are really good actually at reaching out if you tailor your list correctly. Um, so yeah, just taking a lot of angles in that side. But that's, we've got some secret kind of marketing outreach stuff that we do. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the incentives are a big part of it. I think we're also starting to see a lot more, partner protocols and tools that are coming out that make meeting those Bitcoin users easier. Um, for us, we recently onboarded tBTC from Threshold, which is basically a product that helps Bitcoin users take their Bitcoin multi-chain and put it to work in other places. And it was a really seamless integration for us. We had the fortunate experience to be connected right to the team, work with the tBTC DAO, and start to arrange a way for Bitcoin focused users to make their way into the multi-chain world via Synonym. And I know that they've been really keen on their efforts with a lot of other protocols. So I'm hoping to see more products kind of like Threshold out there that kind of take the EVM Bitcoin spotlight away from wrapped BTC, which has had it for so long. I feel like there's a lot of room for innovation there. I think it's time we start seeing it.
Yeah, and at the risk of stepping on your heels here a little bit, we've also got tBTC integrated on Arbitrum, and more recently actually on Optimism as well. We've got some tBTC incentives from the Threshold DAO on the Arbitrum deployment, and some actual silo incentives from us. But if you're a tBTC holder and you want a little bit more, we've just received an Optimism grant, an OP grant, and tBTC is part of our flagship first round of assets. So there is OP streaming right now to them, and it should be going for like 4 or 5 months. So it should be good.
That's fun. Incentives are always good. I guess with incentives, another part of this onboarding and Ethereum pilling process is education. So what are you mentioned some secret marketing or whatever tools, but do you put any attention, or how do you work with further steps of Ethereum pilling? How do you tell people where to go and how to begin?
Yeah, we try to obviously highlight our differentiators between other types of lending when we can, and just we put out educational threads and stuff around that. But and then we've also got our our intern account, which has been doing fantastic, and that's more of a degen kind of attitude, but still has a lot of useful information in it. And moon math calculations, things like that. But yeah, I think we could do more to step into the educational space. Maybe with our V2, we just haven't wanted to develop too much into our V1 when we have kind of this huge V2 coming. But yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm always all about education. I guess that's why I'm curious. Beachball, what's your approach with that?
Yeah, I think, Silo does a fantastic job with the intern account. I'm a dedicated follower of Silo intern and our previously mentioned fabled Chitoro. But yeah, I think just like learning by doing is probably one of the best ways you can get any users to learn and then become advocates for your product. So strategy threads, the moon math calculations, anything that like incentivizes a user to just get their hands dirty and try right away, I think is the best kind of education. Sure, you could throw out super long form, hand wavy theoretical DeFi articles, but at the end of the day, just getting someone kind of in the trenches and letting them try the product is the best thing you can do. So we try to follow a similar path. And then as far as like communicating to those users and education goes is, and again, this is something that Silo Intern does really well, is just, stay casual, like stay lighthearted. You don't need to approach people in this super formal black tie way, right? Like just be fun, be focused, and give them the info they need without having to have them navigate a wall of text, right?
Oh
That's
yeah.
generally the best way to go about it.
Nobody wants a wall of text, that's for sure. And I really love this hands-on idea. I feel personally, I've been in the space for 3 years now. I'm one of those, I guess, few people who got in through NFTs and stuck around and moved further. But I think there's a pretty decent group of us, a class of the NFT class. For me personally, it was the first application of crypto that made sense. Me coming from film producing and legal background, to me the idea of managing IP on chain and smart contracts and applying them to licensing, all that stuff was really interesting and exciting, and we're starting to see applications around that. But I came after DeFi summer, so I never had the tools to study up on that. And now every time I try to approach, I get totally overwhelmed by all these different fragmented tools and protocols, and where do I go and how do I feel safe? And I don't know how often do you get this sentiment from the users, like, how do I know it's okay to use this thing? And how do you go about making them comfortable?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, I don't apply these rules to myself just because I'm a bit more degenerate. But firstly, rule of thumb, right? Never risk, in my opinion, 8% of your portfolio in any one thing ever. So I try to hold to that rule. And then on the actual security stuff and like discerning what's good or not, it's difficult because the thing is, certain auditing firms are better than others at different times, right? So because the engineers change, right? But if an engineer does really well in an auditing firm, they tend to get really, really wealthy and then they leave. So yeah, I would say just, use only the top firms at any given time, or maybe check back to, where were they when this audit was done? And then the other thing that is invaluable, and not too many protocols do it, is formal verification. So formal verification is a different way of securing a protocol. We work with Sartora, who are one of the top guys there, but it essentially involves you writing rules for your code and then them throwing your code through, I think it's called a solver, and the solver will try to break any of your rules via any input that it can give it, right? So you could say, hey, the utilization rate should never go below 0%. It should never be negative. And it'll try to do that with everything it can. Formal verification found things that a lot of top tier auditors did not find. So I would recommend the 20 team. I would recommend the 20 user as a guide of like what seems safe to me. Yeah, and particularly Sartora, because that's who we use, and we use them for a reason. They're fantastic. Yeah.
That's awesome. But it is definitely, it's a high bar to expect from a user to know that this thing I'm coming to try to farm some yield or try to, make my Bitcoin work a little bit. I need to go and know to look who did the audits and when they did the audits, and have the things changed since then, possibly. Yeah.
Yes. So that's actually one of our biggest focuses as well, right? We have our contracts are non-upgradable, non-immutable. So the contracts that were audited on that day are still the same. And in fact, we couldn't change them if we wanted to, right? So, and that's part of our philosophy as well. So immutability, non-upgradability, always a good thing. A lot of protocols that were extremely, extremely safe, like Euler's previous version, got exploited because of a change that happened after the fact, after audits, right? So yeah, immutability, great thing to watch out for as well.
Wow. Still, it's a high bar to expect the retail to go for.
Yeah, it's difficult. I would maybe try to find someone that is truthful, that maybe can help you discern the information. Just because if you're not very, very into it, it's very, very difficult. Because also, like, if they could have a good audit from a good auditor, and it could be that just certain contracts are not in scope, right? Like it could be that they only audited certain parts of the code, and like that does happen a lot. So yeah.
Oh my God, you're making it even scarier.
Well, yeah, it is the Wild West still, I think, over here, but yeah.
Beachball, what's your ideas on how to make people feel safe and actually do the thing?
Yeah, I mean, to Tenzen's point, don't go crazy, right? Like don't risk it all on one strat, one trade. That's usually a recipe for disaster. Um, that's coming from some early experience in the even crazier days of DeFi summer.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, just looking for teams that are really routinely transparent with their security practices is important. Um, Echoing the more technical side of the previous part of the conversation on formal verification, we did the same thing with a group called Runtime Verification, and I think it's a huge advantage. I think Tencent's really right on that for any team to kind of pursue. But for the average user, just try and get a feel for how transparent the team is with their security. Are the audits and docs linked and visible and easy to follow and understand? It sounds like a really basic thing, but you'd be surprised, right? I think if you as a user can get clear answers on security practices, you're at least trending in the right direction. So before you jump into any new product or protocol or strategy, just spend the 5 minutes it takes to get a feel for that. It really doesn't take long, and it shouldn't take long for any user. And I think that's a great starting point. So at least make sure you're doing that.
Awesome. I love that. I love those tips on safety. Well, we are at the end of the hour. This was amazing. To wrap it up, I just wanted to ask you, we all, I guess, hope for another at least 12 to 18 months of shiny weather for our farming and growing needs. How do you have any advice for builders in DeFi for the next 12 to 18 months?
Well, I mean, for builders in specific, don't miss out on these trends, these narratives, LRTs, even, like Athena, even though it's not traditionally an LRT, right? They're using it like an LRT. The restaking networks, it's going to be important. The points are great opportunities for you as a protocol to actually come in and create a speculative value, right? Because the whole thing about points is like they don't have a dollar value. So that speculation can actually lead to your system kind of creating its own value out of it. That's the sense that we got. Don't miss out on those. There's a lot of chains coming out. The Bitcoin layer 2 narrative will be big for sure. And yeah, just try to get ahead of the curve. Try to be first to market if you want to be successful, I think. Right.
Love it. Love it. Keep running, basically, and running at double speed. Beachball, any advice for builders?
Yeah, stay after it. Don't get discouraged. Chart numbers are going to go up and chart numbers are going to go down. But if you are confident in your goal, just stay focused on that. To Tenzen's point, yeah, look for interesting opportunities in the market that are capturing the mind share of people. Even if you might think that an opportunity doesn't make sense, typically, if all of your friends and on-chain friends are talking about it, there's a real chance that you should probably look at it a little closer and are probably missing something. So don't write off new parts of the industry too quickly, and then don't make trade-offs for speed over security. It is a time-honored mistake that we have seen hurt a lot of builders in the space. So just stay focused, stick to your guns, and don't take any crazy security risks.
Basically, be degen, but not too degen.
Exactly. Yeah, don't go too crazy.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and try. This is just a general learning that we've had after years of running the protocol, right? Don't fork things. We heavily considered forking, like Compound. I would recommend against it. You're going to have a tougher time in the beginning, but that's because lending trust builds over time. right? Your security audits are worth nothing to basically anyone unless there's been a huge amount of time of battle testedness happening. And what we're seeing here is, because a lot of these exploits that have happened around compound forks is just users or the developers didn't know certain parts of the code work the way that they did, because rightfully they didn't build it from scratch, right? Like our developers built everything from the very, very beginning. And that is really helpful because now they understand, hey, actually, if you change that, that could have an error somewhere else. And I know that because I wrote it, right? So yeah, I would recommend build up from the bottom. Yeah.
Wow. Actually taking slower path, I guess.
Yes. And I think that goes into the same
faster.
thing. Yeah, I think that goes into what Beachball was saying, which is like security over time.
Yeah. Wow. I love it. Thank you so much, guys. This was really interesting, really fun. I hope listeners get a lot out of it. I'm sure they will. And I hope to have you guys on sometime again.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It was a great conversation.
Thank you for having us.
Good stuff. Thanks. That was a great chat. For more of these, follow the Engine everywhere, on YouTube, in your favorite podcatcher, on X, on Farcaster, on LinkedIn. Don't just follow, leave us a comment. Let us know, what are you thinking about Ethereum pilling Bitcoin community? Check out Skylab's website, consider joining, apply. Check out Threshold.network and their Taco Access Control plugin. Check out Build Cities, mint their dream NFT, and get to their event in Brussels. Send me pictures. And that's our show for today. Thank you for tuning in. Struggle well, fellow builders. You can do it. Cheers.